welcome there, Hoosiers. Good evening, and welcome to this special presentation from the Progressive Indiana Network. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm the editor-in-chief over here at PIN. I'm also the host of the Who's Left podcast, and I am here this evening with Jackson Franklin, Democratic candidate for Indiana's 5th Congressional District. That's the Indianapolis north suburbs out there toward Anderson and Kokomo and Muncie, that portion of the state. So especially if you live there, we want to hear from you, Jackson's potential future constituents. We are taking questions in the live chat this evening on Facebook Live, on YouTube, at our home at progressiveindiana.net. So if you have questions for Jackson Franklin that you'd like to ask, put those right on your screen, and I will bring them up on our screen, and Jackson will be happy to answer your respectful questions. So before we get going with that, while we let folks trickle in and get their questions queued up, introduce yourself to the good folks if they don't know you already.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me back on, Scott. Much appreciated. I'm Jackson Franklin. I'm running to be your Democratic congressperson here in Indiana's 5th Congressional District. I'm an Army combat medic. I've deployed overseas. I'm a paramedic. I've worked on the ambulances, and this is a grassroots campaign, very much inspired by the likes of Bernie Sanders and many other progressives across the country. We're fighting for things like Medicare for all, getting out of the illegal nonsense wars overseas, unapologetically fighting for unions, workers, women, trans people, all the things that are under attack by this regime right now. And of course, we are fighting to get money out of politics. I am proud to say that I am one of the few candidates in our race that is not taking any corporate PAC money, because we are people powered. We believe that our politicians should listen to us, the voters, not the billionaire oligarchs that are running our country to the ground and stiff workers and do everything that they do to spite humanity. And that's why we're proud to say that this campaign is the direct continuation of the political revolution set off by Bernie Sanders. And much like Bernie Sanders, how he won in this state in 2016, 10 years after his victory, a grassroots progressive will win here again, but we need your help.
All right. Well, Jackson, again, it is good to have you back. And folks, please, questions in the chat, Facebook, YouTube, progressiveindiana.net. Put those right in the chat and we'll ask Jackson. But as we're waiting for some additional questions to come in, we got a couple in the hole. I want to start here. You know, the first time we did one of these together, it was the middle of February, and the world has changed a little bit since then. There's war going on now, and I don't think I've had a chance to hear you give your thoughts on this Iran war. A lot to digest there. You've got the Iran front, you've got the Israel front, you've got the other Gulf states involved in this as well now. You could consider this a part of an extension of the thing going on with Russia and Ukraine, because there are different sides aligned on that. So it sounds very World War-y, so interesting times we live in. Interested to hear your thoughts.
So yeah, we are risking our service members' lives all because our president is blackmailed by the terrorist state of Israel in his relation to Jeffrey Epstein. We all know this. We must make sure that our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen are safe. But most importantly, can we stop committing violent acts of terrorism against girls' schools in Iran, where a Tomahawk missile crashed into a school, killing more than 180 girls between the ages of 7 and 12. We must impeach Donald Trump and the Secretary of War Crimes, Pete Hegseth, and also bring them to The Hague. This is an international incident, war crimes, and also send Netanyahu there too. The fact that Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, can go and say that we are in this war because Israel was going to strike first, and that we just were following up on that, that's an embarrassment on a national stage. And it's obviously, just wrong, morally wrong. Everything's backwards about this. So I'm pretty sure the service members of this nation swore an oath to defend this nation's people, our Constitution. And Iran was not about to attack us. We all know that. And much like how, Iraq, they lied, oh, weapons of mass destruction. Now they were saying like, oh, Iran, Netanyahu is waiting on this war for more than 40 years. And he admits that freely. So we must cut off all aid, military aid, to the state of Israel. And honestly, like if you want to talk about regime change, how about the one that's carrying out 2 genocides, one in Gaza and one in the South Lebanon, and an ethnic cleansing in the West Bank? So we must stand up for human rights across the board, and we must get involved. You always wonder where, like, oh, what would you do in World War II during the Holocaust? You're doing it right now. That's what you're doing.
So I'm going to go right to the chat. We've got a great question in here, and this is from, well, let's see. How would you pronounce that? Is that Bill John? Maybe that's the Scandinavian pronunciation, and it's billion. Anyway, Bill asks on YouTube, starting with the idea that we need to get a candidate that can outcompete Sparts with so many candidates running on the Democratic side, how do we as a group figure out who the best candidate is? And Bill John tells us it is Bill John. Thanks for the question, Bill John. Jackson, what do you have to say to that?
So yeah, Indiana ranks 50th out of voter turnout, last midterm, that is. And then, so we got to understand, why are people not voting for the Democrats, right? And then we're not a red state, we are a gray state. If did not vote was a candidate, they'd win across the state, all over. So what is it? Oh, it's perhaps that we have 2 corporate parties. 2 parties that serve the interest of the billionaire oligarchs that have their boot on our necks, and there's not a party for the working class. What this campaign is doing is giving a home to the political homeless. We are the center of dialogue. So what makes us we're the ones to take on Victoria Sparks. I would say we're the only campaign to effectively do so, because we are just unapologetically fighting for working class people, not the donor class. We are fighting for very popular policy. And by the end of the day, that's what motivates that people fight harder when you're fighting for something and not just against something. So I'm running on an issues campaign, unlike some others. And that's what kind of separates me. I've been running this campaign, or been running for a year and a half now. We've talked to countless, tens of thousands of people at this point. And I'm very optimistic, not just for this primary, but also going on to take on Victoria Sparks. And by the end of the day, Victoria Sparks and I have exactly one thing in common. It's the fact that we are fighting for the class that we belong to. She is fighting for the ruling class, the millionaires and billionaires that have broken this country. I am fighting for the working class, living wages, the, stronger unions, and many of the human rights that she has fought to take away. I am the candidate to take on Victoria Sparks because of this populist message. A lot of people voted for Donald Trump and then voted for AOC and then Zoran Mamdani. There's a populist pipeline, and people talk about how are we going to win back Republicans. It's not being diet MAGA, selling out human rights. It's by just being a firebrand, calling truth to power. That's what they want. They voted for Trump because they know the system. Most people all across the aisle know that the system's not working for them. We need to have candidates that stand up with a spine and stand up for what's right for the sake that it is right. And that's our campaign.
So one thing I do want to come back to, Jackson, and again, folks, please put questions in the chat for us on Facebook, on YouTube, and at progressiveindiana.net. That is built on top of Substack. So if you're over there, go ahead and check us out on Substack Live. Ask your questions in the chat. Jackson would love to hear from you. But while we're waiting on some more folks to, put a few questions in there, I want to come back to the war. And, you mentioned the way Israel is sort of leading us in this war, and not the other way around. And your criticism of the state of Israel is fierce, and many folks argue that criticism of the Jewish state is anti-Semitism. Now, I don't agree with that assessment, but it is not me you need to assuage. So right. How do you deflect? How do you deal with anti-Semitism accusations when you are such a fierce critic of the state of Israel?
So there are many Jewish groups that are against the Zionism, because we got to define terms here, and what the people launching this war love is that people are kind of confused on terms right now. So I would say that, experts would say Zionism is just apartheid. Like, hey, you believe in a caste system, and critique of the Jewish identity, that's anti-Semitism. Critique of a government, that no, like, you're not, that's just politics. If Germany commits a genocide and I say, hey, stop doing the Holocaust, am I anti-German? No, I'm just calling out, I'm anti-genocide, right? So, and I call fair shot. I call balls and strikes. I'm against a theocracy in Israel just as much as I am against Saudi Arabia. Both places killed civilians. They're both bad. So I would want a secular democracy where human rights shine through. So it has nothing to do with attacking Jewish faith. In fact, Judaism is antithetical to Zionism, the belief of an apartheid system where one small group is like the dominant group of politics, and it's basically apartheid South Africa. So yeah, we just have to separate that in the sense of when we critique the government of Israel, that is not like critiquing all Jewish identity. And in fact, the fact that there is a real rise of anti-Semitism, it probably comes from the fact that this, Benjamin Netanyahu has been purposely conflating, and he's been using it as a cover, but he's making it to when there are actual anti-Semites coming along, and people are going to be like, oh yeah, well, they called the hippies on the street that are protesting the war, they called them anti-Semites. So when like a straight up Nazi comes along, someone who doesn't know any better might be like, oh well, like they're critiquing them for being anti-Semitic too, maybe it's kind of just a wash. So it's like you cried wolf too many times. So that's the danger. Like that's the real practical danger of overusing these terms, purposely muddying the waters. So no, it's in fact, I believe it is quite anti-Semitic to be pro-genocide, and in the sense that the Palestinian people, Arabs, are Semitic people. So that is anti-Semitic. If you want to cleanse them off the map, that is anti-Semitic. So I would believe that you got to separate and define terms.
Let's go in a altogether different direction. We were talking about the war with Iran because it's current, because it's in the news right now. It's going on as we speak. Something else that happened this week was not demoralizing and makes you want to wring your hands and bury your head in your hands. There was something inspiring. We saw the Artemis 2 mission go just travel further from Earth than any manned spacecraft has before. They saw the dark side of the moon. Insert Pink Floyd reference here. But as inspiring as it was, it makes you ask, is this actually helpful? Is this a good use of limited resources? Or should we be focused on Earthlings first? What say you?
I most definitely think we should further fund NASA. And like right now, our current military budget is over $1 trillion. So the thing is like, oh, like it's like that one meme where there's a huge pipe and there's like a billionaire guzzling all the water, and then there's someone like who's like just trying to get a drop. And it's like that big billionaire person, that's the military budget. And like NASA is just trying to like, hey, with their tiny little budget, they're able to go to the moon, So I believe definitely we should double NASA's budget. We should cut military spending. We should maybe stop investing in killing children and starving people overseas, and maybe invest in the technologies that gave us things like GPS. The first time we went to the moon, of course. And so, yeah, I feel like it's very inspiring to all humanity. It's also how we get a lot of these advanced technologies. They come out of this sector all the time. So, yeah, we need to further invest in that. Now that money, it's just, we don't have a raising money. Well, yeah, we could raise taxes on the rich, but we spend it on things that do not help us working class people here at home. But NASA is most definitely one of those things that we must fund. The sciences, is a huge investment into our future of a species and especially as a country.
Let's talk about another governmental agency that is well-liked and popular, like NASA. Let's talk about the United States Postal Service. And this question...
I thought you were going to say ICE as a joke. I was so ready. I was like, oh boy, here we go. All right, yeah, Postal Service. Good guess.
No,
Okay.
and one of the good ones. Let's...
Genuinely good.
We got this question in was submitted ahead of time through our web form by Austin down in Knox County. Austin Ray, head of the Young Democrats down there in Knox County. Now, he's not in your district, but the post office... This affects all Americans. It's something I think we kind of all value and hold dear. And Austin says, as you've likely seen, the United States Postal Service is facing ongoing financial challenges that directly impact workers and service reliability. Can we count on you to protect and sustain this essential public service? Specifically, would you support legislation to ensure USPS remains fully funded and operational for all Americans? And would you be open to further reforms to address long-term financial burdens like those created by the 2006 Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act so the Postal Service can remain sustainable for future generations?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. On all of that. It's a vital service. Like, that keeps everything afloat. I think you have the right to send messages and mail. There's a famous song by Ken Paxton, like, hey, if the nuclear Armageddon happens tomorrow, the mail will still be sent because we must protect the USPS. But yes, of course, this is vital. Of course, we gotta unionize, make sure that people are getting living wages for these jobs, protections, workman's comp, paid sick time off, like all these things, because this is such a backbone of our society. And yeah, we need to treat them as such with the dignity and respect that they deserve.
Really, it speaks to the markets. Free markets are great for certain things, right? But not for other things. And the post office specifically is needed to service those rural areas, those remote areas. If you look at like Alaska, for example, or even just, bringing it down to the lower 48, places in Wyoming, hell, there's places out here in southern Indiana that are very much like this. It is not efficient for FedEx or UPS to go out there into the sticks. And if they do, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for it. Folks, they depend on the Postal Service. And also, it's in the Constitution. That's one thing that the Postal Service has going for it. If your constitutional conservatives want to bring the founding document up, it's right there. So, I want to go to our chat over on Substack Live at progressiveindiana.net, where Hoosier Lemon says, the median home buying age is now 40 years old. What legislation would you propose to help lower the cost of housing in the country? And would you support legislation to ban wealthy out-of-state investors and private equity from buying up residential homes and renting them out at astronomical rates? Leading question, but point well taken.
Yes. Next question. No, I'm just kidding. So, yes, we need to invest. Congress needs to invest in making millions and millions of more homes, affordable homes. And also, we need to have strong tenant unions. Like, imagine you have a bad landlord above you, right? All the people, all the houses, they need to get together and be like, hey, has this guy been treating your water, your lights, every utility used? And just coming together in solidarity and like demanding better upon and also price regulated rent. I believe strongly in Zoran Mamdani, freeze the rent in New York City. That's a great policy. And just making things affordable. I mean, especially as a young person, we gave up all hope of ever owning a home thanks to the 2008 financial crisis. And I think it's time for the rich to pay their fair share in taxes to make sure that the rest of us can live on this planet too, healthfully, happily, and just pay their fair share in taxes and make sure that we can have more housing, affordable housing, and unions.
Let's dig into that a little bit. And, we talk about the rich paying their fair share. you, like and I would suspect a lot of our viewers, want things like Medicare for all. We want a Green New Deal. We want free higher education. We think those are public services that we should all pool our resources together and pay for together, and that the rich should, pay their fair share. But like, what is their fair share? What number do we settle on? How do we arrive at that? What is the appropriate tax rate for income, for wealth, for corporations? How do you decide that?
So I'm in favor of Bernie Sanders' proposal of, let's mention tuitional, like wiping out the tuitional debt for more than 45 million Americans. How are you going to pay for that? Well, Bernie Sanders proposes that if we have a 0.1% bond trade tax on Wall Street, the same people that crashed the financial, 2008 financial crisis, if we have a 0.1 bond trade tax, a 0.05% stock trade tax, among some other things, that would be enough within 1 year to completely wipe out all tuitional debt for all more than 45 million Americans. And every subsequent year, that money can go into making sure that we have completely public, funded public colleges and trade schools. I feel like education is a human right, as well as, this is another hot take here. You could either have school meals for our children, or you can have billionaires. You can have a clean environment in which, the government is taking care of you and, there's not as pollutants, dumping across the rivers, or you can have billionaires. You can have good roads. You can have good schools. You can have a healthcare system where no one dies. Right now, 120,000 Americans die every year due to lack of health insurance. You can have a brighter vision for the future, or we can have billionaires. So the choice, to me, the problem with this grotesque capitalism is that eventually the working class runs out of money. This is trickle up economics, where all the money is getting siphoned to that top 1%, which that group, the top 1%, have more money than the bottom 93% of income earners combined. Elon Musk, the world's first ever trillionaire, has more wealth than the bottom 53% of income earners combined. He did not work harder than 53% of the nation combined. He did not work harder than all these people. He got ahead by exploiting his workers, by sending jobs out to China, to Vietnam, to Mexico, to all these other places, stiffing, paid family leave, not having that as an option, and all these different loopholes that they do. And we pay more in taxes anyway. When they send out their Cayman Islands, have their headquarters there, and then they don't pay any taxes here. We need to close these loopholes, make sure that, we can have a system that represents everyone and takes care of everyone, not just that top 1%. So I would say you make $999 million, 99999 plus, you should be taxed at 100% at every penny after that. Congrats. You won capitalism. You get a park named after you, and everyone is singing Kumbaya in your honor. But we're gonna fund the kids. They're gonna be able to eat. How about we get the houseless vets off the streets before you consider buying your 50th yacht and going to space on a recreational cruise, right? And attempting to destroy historic bridges so you can bring out your $500 million yacht. No, this is greed, and this is greed on an untold level. Not an untold, unprecedented level. The difference between the greed of a billionaire and the greed of a drug addict on a local level is that the billionaire's greed for wealth and power, it's killing the entire planet. You can't have the billionaire that is, let's say in a fossil fuel industry, have the profit motive in mind of how many pollutants can they generate out into the world for their 30th vacation home. enough is enough, and we have to have a system that actually takes care of our people and not just a small few wealthy, powerful amount of people.
So I guess let me play devil's advocate, and I'm gonna pose as somebody who's well off, well-to-do, living in Carmel or something in your district, and they say, okay, listen, Elon Musk, he had a leg up. He was an emerald mine nepo baby. It's not just that he exploited workers; it's that he was given a leg up in life. His parents worked hard and took good care of him.
Yes.
Gave right. Well, and gave him his because we all want what's best for the next generation, right? So what would you say to folks who legitimately worked hard and are saving up and want to give their kids a leg up for the next generation? Why do you want to take things away from them? What kind of communist are you, Jackson?
I'm no communist. No, there are moral millionaires. You can work hard enough, but if you are a billionaire, you can make $30,000 every single day from the times of Jesus and to today and still not have $1 billion. That's more money than you could ever spend or pass down, and you can't ever spend that in your lifetime. So I'm not saying like you should. I want to have a system where the harder you work, the further you get ahead. Right now, that is not our current system. A lot of people get, fortunately, lucky, and especially if you're in an NBA player that is like very talented. Yeah, like on the arts side of things, sometimes you're able, and like sports and things like that, like the talent does rise up to those levels sometimes. On other sectors, you're like a steel worker, you're a UAW worker, you're just a retail worker. The harder you work, more times than not, out in society, you do not get that work back to you. You do not reap what you sow. You have your excess labor stolen from you. Like, you put out all this work into the community, and then you have a boss that steals all the profits. And then it gives you just enough to live to come back to work and enough to shut up so you don't ask, why is he taking half your paycheck?
Yeah. Let me take a quick break here and ask for folks again, if you're watching on Facebook Live, on YouTube, or on Substack Live at progressiveindiana.net, we would love to hear some questions for you for our candidate here tonight, Jackson Franklin. He wants to talk to you. He doesn't want to talk to me. But in the meantime, you got to continue talking to me. And listen, I sort of poke fun at Carmel. It seems to be a pastime here in Indiana. There's basketball, there's corn, and then there's making fun of people that live in Carmel, and a little bit of sour grapes, I'm sure.
That's from someone who lives in Muncie. If you guys have seen Parks and Rec, Eagletown is basically Carmel, right? So I can relate. It's a national treasure. It's
listen, I'm a fan of a good roundabout. I love a good roundabout. They should have more of them in other places. But
walkable cities.
I guess I want to come to that though, because listen, that is the district that you're looking to represent here includes affluent communities like Carmel, like Fishers and Noblesville, but also includes towns that have maybe gotten the raw end of the deal, from globalization, the Rust Belt, as it were. You look at like Kokomo or Anderson or Muncie to an extent. What does the district look like from the other side of that divide out in Muncie?
So as far as what does it look like on our side, like where like our jobs were taken away?
Yeah, just speak to the folks who are better off and maybe don't get where you're coming from, maybe don't get where the populist anger comes from.
So yeah, Muncie, in fact, of all places, used to be called Middletown, America. Decades ago, the government used to do polls here all the time. Corporations like McDonald's, like they would test out their products in Muncie. We were like, because our demographics were just right to be like, oh, this is generally what the nation is thinking. And then NAFTA hit and our jobs went our factory jobs, or all these factories that left, and now there's just big vacant parking lots just sitting around, right? So this was a thriving community, and then we saw that the people in charge, what we perceive to be the elites, took our jobs and put them in other places. Now people are suffering. There's houseless problems in Anderson, in Muncie, in Kokomo, all in Marion, all over these places. We are just asking for our government to have our back, and it's, as some people have said, that if this was a baseball game, you're the people are the batter, and then sometimes the pitchers, like these corporations that are just throwing stuff at us. The government in this metaphor is supposed to be the umpire, calls balls and strikes. Like, hey, that's out of regulations. Let's play fair. Let's make sure that things are not, hurting the people too much.
You're not allowed to fire the ball out of a cannon, guys. Come on.
But when the pitcher bribes the ump and says, no, actually, that was a perfect strike, even though, it was way off sides, that's not a fair game. Who would want to play that game, right? So all we are asking is for a fair chance for working people, and not just, roll over when the billionaires throw money at our politicians. We want politicians that stand up with a spine. And on the point of this divide between, Muncie, Anderson, Kokomo, Marion, Tipton, and then more places in Hamilton County, I would actually say, retort it a little bit. We are all feeling the same kind of pain in a lot of sense. And I use the expression, if Elon Musk were to walk in, into this Zoom call, right? We're both working class people. This would be the most wealthy Zoom call anywhere on the planet, right? But doesn't mean that we're not working class. The overwhelming majority of this Zoom call would be working class people. And I feel Hamilton County is the same way, whereas most people are worried about their health care. They're worried about ICE deporting their friends. They're worried about the war, sending their children to go die. There are wealthy people, like the people who work down in Indy and they live up in Carmel, as you mentioned. It doesn't mean that 99% of that area, it's a wealthy, they pay taxes, they got the roundabouts. We made sure of that. But most of those people are living day-to-day lives, and they are concerned with their future, and they can relate more to us and a couple counties away, more so than they can their wealthy neighbors. The millionaire. We got 2 billionaires in this state, so we have more in common, more in solidarity together than what that community even has with each other. We are worried about the same things. I want to give you health care, living wages, unions, paid sick time off, time to spend with your children to go to any fully funded public schools. These issues go across whatever boundaries we can draw up, and it's because we are working class people and we have that solidarity between each other.
And the richest person in Indiana is still a lot closer to being homeless than they are to being Elon Musk, by orders of magnitude. So I guess I wanted to go back to our chat and back to YouTube, where Jacob says that you and he share similar beliefs, but some of his friends are maybe a little less politically active and more like the median voter, right? And so Jacob's a BSU alum, raised in our 4th district, and asks, what policies and beliefs or messages of yours do you recommend he pass on to those friends in Indiana's 5th district to get them out and motivated to vote in the primaries?
So just know that this is a grassroots campaign. We are going against corporate-backed campaigns. You know how, I don't know if they are also BSU or anything like that, but I want to wipe out tuitional college debt. People in our generation, our whole public education system experience was that of hiding in school shooter drills. I want to have gun reform, common sense gun reform, Medicare for all, ending the genocide in Gaza. Get money out of politics. I'm Bernie Sanders, basically, or AOC in Indiana, but pick your favorite, but I'm better, of course. And there are many issues. You know, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And I'd encourage them to go to jacksonfranklinforcongress.com. And if they're passionate about an issue, I promise you, I am also probably very passionate about that issue as well. So there's reason to vote in this election. We should not have another 2022 cycle where did not vote was the leading, uh, you know, position on the ballot. Basically, if it was a candidate, we need to get people out there and energized to vote, and that's what this campaign is doing.
So I guess I want to come back and ask you about the Rust Belt and about Anderson and Kokomo and Tipton and Marion and towns like that. And, you know, in many ways, the solution being offered to towns like this, you know, if you look at the state level here, there's these tax breaks given to data centers. And in 2025, Mike Braun and Indiana Republicans passed their property tax bill, and, you know, it gave the homeowners a little bit of relief, but for the most part, it defunded localities and counties. And so without that funding, they're turning to whatever they can to get businesses into their communities to maybe make up some of that tax revenue. And so data centers are sort of being offered as the solution. Now, I know you're a big fan of Senator Sanders. It comes through, and I know Bernie, for one, is suggesting a nationwide moratorium on the construction of data centers. But also, you know, you mentioned you're a big fan of labor and you know, organized labor and unions. Unions want to build these things. These are at least up front during these massive construction projects, good jobs. Now, they don't provide many jobs down the line, but how do you thread that needle, I guess? What jobs alternative are you offering for organized labor if we're not building data centers? What are we building?
So yes, I do agree with Senator Bernie Sanders and having a moratorium on data centers until we can have like the legislation catch up with that technology. You know, having closed looped cooling, like water cooling for the servers. You know, ending the Chat GPT, like every one prompt is 7 water bottles just down the drain, and making sure that we have data protections like that is what's seen in the EU, but make it better. Because like, what data is it? It's our online data they are selling to multi-million-dollar corporations without your consent. So having all these reforms on data centers, granted, what do we do, you know, with, you know, unions and the trades right now until we get to that point? Well, I am in favor of a Green New Deal. We should have a nationwide works program giving jobs to hundreds of thousands of people, making sure that we have green energy here at home. We need to make sure that we are going away from destroying our ecosystems and actually building up our infrastructure, our power, like our energy sector, and that will create a lot of jobs in doing so. So why is China getting ahead on these things? Why, you know, they're making technologies and then they're going out across the country, and in a matter of like 10, 15 years, they now have high-speed rail across everywhere. Why can't we put our workers to that task and make sure we have high-speed rail across this country, giving many workers jobs, making sure that we have, you know, completely renewable energy, saving the planet practically, and creating green jobs along the way. So there's no sense. It's just like, where you focus, like, what are you building? Let's have things that are more productive, worth building. And data centers, like, have all these protections, take care, like nip it in the butt, you know, with the problems. And then we can, you know, work with unions on giving them, you know, better contracts, expanding union rights, everyone having a right to the union, the PRO Act, and just making sure, you know, environmental justice, union justice, all wrapped up into one.
It sounds like labor is basically in the same position that a lot of our communities are here. It's like, well, we're fighting for scraps, and the data center is kind of like the only thing you got. We could actually be building things that serve whole communities and serve us in a more holistic way. My God. High-speed rail, I'm all about it. Listen, I'm still a 4-year-old at heart. I love trains. We can fly to the dark side of the moon, but we can't get from Washington to New York at more than 60 miles an hour. That's insanity.
How about instead of investing in bombs to destroy schools and hospitals overseas, we actually use that money to invest in building them over here at home? That's even more construction, like there's so many ways to skin that animal, like we could have all these things all in one, but the current regime does not want to do it because they are super serving the certain set of billionaires that have bankrolled their campaigns.
Well, okay. So yeah, about billionaires bankrolling campaigns, that is, obviously a problem on the Republican side, but it is often a problem on the Democratic side too. One of the Democrats who the billionaire class seems to love is the current House Minority Leader and the man in line to be Speaker should Democrats retake the House in November, and that's Hakeem Jeffries. So if Jackson Franklin here wins this race in Indiana and Democrats take the House back, is Hakeem Jeffries the right leader for you?
No, absolutely not ever. He will never have my vote. He's burned that trust. He's taken so much money. Well, he's just a coward. He, Ro Khanna out of Congress, out of California, and Thomas Massie, the same duo that brought us what we have on the Epstein files. Right before we struck Iran, that same duo brought up a resolution to make sure that we do not attack Iran, make sure that the president gets approval from Congress. And he was like, but right before Trump attacked Iran, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer buried that bill. They let it die in committee. They did not want to propose because secretly, guess what? They agree with this war. So if you agree with an offensive strike on a nation that did not attack us, putting my friends and the civilians over there, most of all, in danger, then you are not worthy of the position that you hold. I think they should resign from Congress, like right now, immediately, and have a special election. I think if you take money from AIPAC, you should not be a Democrat. If you take corporate PAC money from anyone, you should not be a Democrat. If you support genocide, you should not be a Democrat. If you don't support Medicare for all, you don't think healthcare is a human right, you should be kicked out of the party. So among all these things, yeah, it's like fail. Like I feel like there's a lot of things that the Democratic Party should be doing and stepping in and saying like, hey, if you want that D next to your name, you're going to have to not be a Nazi or at least not a fascist collaborator. So, you wouldn't allow a literal armband wearing Nazi into the Democratic Party. There is a line. Where do we draw that line? All right. Well, if he supports that Holocaust, what's the, you're always supporting one more Holocaust than I do, which is 0. Then for me to say like, all right, you're not my friend. You get out of here. Like, scrank. I don't want you. So yeah, we need to make sure. I would be in favor of like either Ro Khanna. He's proven his leadership in these years. AOC's been great. I think I'm leaning one of those two. I mean, I'm also a big fan of Ilhan, Rashida Tlaib, Maxwell Frost. Like all those people have been really great. But I think those two are the front runners in my head of who I want to be Speaker of the House when we take back Congress.
Well, very good. That was actually what I was going to ask you next was, who you think is doing a good job in Congress. And it sounds like you're a fan of Ro Khanna, AOC, obviously. You mentioned some of the other members of, the squad, they call it, Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Diana Presley and whatnot. And I guess I would ask, are any of those folks capable of garnering support from the majority of the caucus? Is there somebody that you think could garner a wide enough net of support to become speaker that isn't another squishy Jeffries clone?
So I think it's going to be really close because like AOC has all the name recognition, and she's been around. She's Bernie Sanders handed the torch down on the Fighting Oligarchy tour. It was very kind of obvious to see. So whether if she goes up to Senate for 2028, and if Ro Khanna takes the House and 27 basically after we take it back, we'll see. If AOC doesn't even want the position because she knows she's either going to go for like president or Senate, then hey, maybe it's an easy pick. Maybe Ro Khanna just steps up. Maybe he runs for president, she runs for Senate, and then I don't know. Maybe it's I'm not sure. There's so many possible people that it could be, but yeah, I think the Progressive Caucus just needs to really align against the New Democrat, the so-called New Democrats, which is the establishment wing of the Democratic Party, and we have to make sure that a real leadership steps up. These are trying times. We cannot mess this up. Like the corporate Democrats have failed us, and if you give them the chance, they will fail you again. We will not allow it. It's inexcusable this time.
So I want to go back to the chat and come back to a foreign policy question. A great ask over here on Substack Live at progressiveindiana.net from Mel. And this one's gone under the radar with the war in Iran. We're also meddling in Cuba. And Mel asks, would you agree with ending the blockade that we've instituted against Cuba?
Yes, of course, I would end the blockade. It's forced starvation of a whole people. Donald Trump has continually threatened a genocide of an entire civilization, but no one's seeming to pay attention when Cuba does it. Israel used starvation, electricity, water as a weapon of mass weapon against all the people. That's a war crime, and what we are doing in Cuba right now is a war crime as well. I would very much have to join the people that went down to Cuba to give the supplies. That have been awesome. I congratulate them. I share all their posts. Love you guys, and we must continue to fight that. We cannot allow the torment of civilians. The definition of terrorism is violence against civilians for a political or religious cause. That's textbook right there. So that's for a political cause. Why are we killing and starving civilians? I actually saw a story out of Drop Site News by Ryan Grimm when he visited there, that the hospital, the ER nurses, the newborn babies are on ventilators, and when they have power surges, and when it goes out for about 20 minutes until it kicks back, and until the generators, they can get enough power into them. And the nurses, when they're taking care of one group of people, when the power goes out, they immediately run across to the infant section, and they have to hand pump ventilators, all these children, for a long time. So then some of them have died, I believe. So we have to make sure that we're taking care. These are your fellow humans. These are our neighbors. We're supposed to be a nation among nations, not a nation above nations. We have to treat it. We have to completely end the embargo on Cuba. Actually, pay them back. They pay for the damages. That's just what's right. Germany had to pay for those damages after World War II, and this is, in a sense, it's on a smaller scale. It's Cuba. We have a lot more countries to get to as well, outside Cuba. But it's just what's right. We're killing and starving people. We have to pay. That's on us. That blood is on our hands. So we have to make it right. And yes, free Cuba, free Venezuela too. We're also still.
You probably have better luck naming countries in the Western Hemisphere that our country has not interfered in, honestly. So, we're talking about difficult things and maybe stuff that is uncomfortable for the average voter, particularly maybe the average voter in Indiana, who thinks maybe we're a bit out there. So what do you say to folks who maybe agree with a lot of the stuff we're saying, but they think, well, maybe some of the other stuff, it's a little radical. I'm not sure he can win. What do you tell them?
We haven't been winning for the last 20 years. I am just what the Democratic Party, like what the base it actually is. I support Medicare for all. All right, 70% of the nation wants Medicare for all. So I think,
and not just Democrats. Yeah.
Say what?
Oh, and not just Democrats. That's
not just Democrats.
Yeah.
Like that's Republicans, Independents, Democrats, like the whole nation all pulled together. 70% wants Medicare for all. So that does not make me so like I agree that I perhaps sometimes give like the vibes of like this some like crazy leftist person like out there. But what I'm calling for is really just like down the mainstream plate. Like it's really just like underhand. Like this is just what everyone is talking about right now. I talk about legalizing cannabis, and here in Indiana, it's 87% approval rating. So it's like this is not crazy idea. Like this, it's populist. This is what the working class want. So try not to be, fooled by the mainstream propaganda of like, oh, well, Eli Lilly dropped an ad and they said that, this person's crazy, for wanting to legalize cannabis, their competition. So we are going to win because we go to the people. We are not going to win when we're like walking this weird tightrope between, sanitizing your message to please large corporations and then just being popular enough with the people to maybe do what you can. No, our kind of campaign, grassroots style, it goes full send to where the people are. And all of everything we've said is extremely popular. There's nothing that's like way out there lefty. I agree, like in big politics, yes, you're going to see this on the left, but that's just because the left is just populist. We are the lane for working class people, to see change out of. You're not going to see if the competition is who's going to sell out more to the billionaires, the Republicans are going to win that fight every single time. So why even try to beat them in their game? When you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you should do is quit digging. So I think after the last 20 years of having diet Republican Democrats that take corporate PAC money and then our voter turnout is abysmal, how about we actually try doing this thing in democracy called, what is it? Being popular, that's right, and actually trying to win in our elections instead of just selling out to large corporations and losing time and time again. It's time for a grassroots movement to take hold in this state and in this nation and actually give the fascists a run for their money. And so I would say join our campaign and you'll see, we're going to prove everyone, we're going to scare the corporations. They've spent money in this race to make sure that, because they see us as a threat. And I have something to admit that would not shock any of you. I am that threat to those billionaires because we are for the people. We are going to make sure that they pay their fair share in taxes, that we give people health care, that we can actually take care of human rights across the board. So that's why they are dumping money into this race in this primary, because they know they don't want what we're selling, the billionaires, but the people are that's our strength. It says civil rights leader John Lewis once said, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. It's on to us to organize that power and affect change in this country.
And for the normies out there who thinks Jackson is kind of out there, listen, Jackson's getting criticism from the left over on Twitch. You've got a troll, so it's like you're not nearly as far out there as some people think. Buttons Bloomers on Twitch calls you a Democrat shill, propping up a system that denies humanity, an electoral myopic loser, and calls to break up the Uniparty. So I guess
I'm trying to break. That's what I'm trying to do. It's like, all right, I could try to run on like the Labor Party ticket or like the Democratic Socialist, and then guess what? You just don't win. I'm like, I want to like actually get the policy done. Like I want ranked choice voting. I want you to get your own party, my friend, and I want you to yell at me from that big coalition you made, and then I'll be in whatever party I'm in, And then guess what? On actual policy, like you can say that, but if we both agree with Medicare for all, like, hey, I look forward to working with you. But until we get out of this two-party system, hence why I am running as a Democrat. I'm dragging the party back to the center because we have two right-wing party. Well, we have a far right-wing party and a right-wing party, and I'm trying to drag it back to common sense. So yes, I am. I'll take all those bullets. I'll be proud. I'm proud of that. Like, hey, it is what it is. But I know what my mission is. My mission is to make sure we get to a level where we can have more parties, and the only way you can do that is by, I guess some people say the word hijacking one of the parties, kicking out the corporate influence, and making sure that the people are in Congress and not just the billionaire pedophiles.
Only got a couple minutes here left tonight, Jackson, and I guess with that, I want to ask you are the bold truth teller in this race, right? You maybe say the things that other folks are afraid to say. What is the thing that Indiana's 5th district needs to hear that no one else is talking about?
Well, see, there's so many things. That's I will say I've been leading the charge on a great many things. It's just all so rounded. Like, I've been leading the charge on calling what Israel's doing a genocide in this district. And now, a lot of people are coming around. Like, compare when people first got into this race to now, they're sounding like a bunch of mini me's. Like, it's like Austin Powers. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that I've affected that change in my fellow candidates. But I just see it how it is. If you want a actual fighter in Congress that is very knowledgeable, I would say, on policy, then this is the campaign for you. Money in politics is evil. There are candidates in this race that's taking a lot of money from corporate PACs. Don't go to them and ask them oh, you're so bold for saying I care about healthcare. Victoria Sparks might as well tell you that. Oh, I care about healthcare. That doesn't mean anything. Are you in favor of Medicare for all? Or do you? Some people even say, because I, been very loud for the last couple of years saying abolish ICE. ICE is not reformable. Now there are people in this race that say we need to abolish and replace ICE. We need to abolish and replace the Gestapo. Guys, we just need to rename it. ICE. That's a bad organization. Let's change the letters around and then keep the exact same thing. Why? You have a deep misunderstanding of what ICE actually is. It's not border security. It's if border security is the wall on your front door and it's the lock, ICE is the person inside antagonizing your guest. People that are paying rent. So ICE is not needed. We need to make sure we abolish ICE. But yeah, that's a symptom of a much larger problem. Like, why can't they just call out the injustices? Why can't they just see the truth as it is? And ultimately, I don't know why they can't see it. But if you want front line, someone who's been on the front lines and has an understanding of the larger issues, this is the campaign for you. Because I am not afraid to say, I'm not afraid to call out a genocide. I'm not afraid to call out a masked federal thug agency for what they are. And if you guys want to get involved, early voting is starting right now, or it's already started. And I've already had hundreds of people message me saying that they've already voted for me, which makes me very incredibly hopeful. And I'm very optimistic. But May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, is the big election day. And this race will decide whether the people win this election or the corporations. Can a working class candidate run for a year and a half and be in the front lines the entire time? My head is spinning. I'm ready for May 6th to come around. But can the working class candidate run for a year and a half, grassroots, go up against the political establishment backed by hundreds of thousands of dollars from the large corporations? Can we defeat them? I believe so. And this primary will decide that. So I need you to vote. I need you to get your friends, your family, your coworkers to go out and vote. And I need you to go to JacksonFranklinForCongress.com to hit the donate button. We are grassroots. We need all the help we can get. You can also see our email, see our phone number, join our team. We need all the door knockers we can get. We have about 3 weeks left. If you want Medicare for all, if you want to get out of the wars, if you want to abolish ICE, if you want universal school meals, paid sick time off, all these great policies, then join our campaign. Donate, volunteer, spread the word, and vote. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Other lives depend on this very primary. This is seen as the one swing district of the state. The fact that we can take down Victoria Sparks and impeach Donald Trump relies on what we do here today. So I need your help. We need to make sure, who can tell the difference between a blue bomb and a red bomb falling on Gaza? Not the dead children in Gaza. We need to make sure that we have a anti-genocide voice in Congress, not a pro-genocide in this primary. So I need your help.
Glad you finished right there, because you're starting to cut out. So good. We didn't miss a whole heck of a lot. You got a little fuzzy there at the end. So I'm glad we made it through relatively unscathed. Jackson Franklin, folks, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Doing another one of these next Sunday, same time, neighboring district, Indiana's massive 4th, back at 7 p.m. next Sunday with John Whetstone. If you are in the 4th or just a political junkie in the state of Indiana, join us then. Until next time, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.